The frantic search for a charger is a unique form of modern panic. It's a low-grade, buzzing anxiety that sharpens into genuine dread when your phone's battery icon blinks that final, threatening red. My laptop was dead, my phone was on its last 1%, and I had a proposal for a multi-million-dollar architectural project that was due by midnight. Of course, this was the moment every charger in our sprawling, minimalist apartment had decided to stage a coordinated disappearance. "Mark." I called out, my voice echoing slightly in the vast, open-plan living room. "Have you seen my laptop charger? The braided one?" No answer. Just the soft ambient hum of the refrigerator and the distant, muffled sounds of the city 5 stories below. He was probably in his study, headphones on, lost in a world of stock tickers and market analyses. My husband, the brilliant and ever-distracted financier. I huffed, a strand of my usually impeccable blonde bob falling into my eyes. I was still in my work clothes, a tailored cream-colored sheath dress, but my stockings were off and my feet were bare on the cool polished concrete floor. The proposal was my masterpiece, the culmination of 6 months of painstaking work. It could secure my firm's future and finally, put my name on the map in a way that wasn't just Mark Thorne's talented wife. I'd already turned our bedroom upside down, checked every outlet in the kitchen and living room, and ransacked my home office. There was only one place left to look. Mark's study, and more specifically his oversized, weather-beaten leather backpack that he took on his business trips. He was oddly attached to the thing, a relic from his college days that he claimed was his lucky charm. Pushing open the door to his study was like entering a different universe. My space was all clean lines, light woods, and curated inspiration boards. His was a controlled chaos of dark walnut, triple monitors flashing with green and red numbers, and the faint, lingering scent of his cologne and expensive coffee. The backpack was slung over the back of his ergonomic chair. "Sorry, darling, desperate times," I murmured to the empty room, unzipping the main compartment. It was a jumble of his life. A sleek silver laptop, a tangle of cables that were undoubtedly his, a half-eaten bag of almonds, a leather-bound notebook, and a crisp copy of the Financial Times. I dug through it, my fingers searching for the familiar shape of my charger. I pushed past a soft, zippered pouch where he kept his passport and travel toiletries. My hand closed around a hard, rectangular object. Not a charger. Something else. I pulled it out. It was a small white cardboard box. The kind you buy at any pharmacy. My brain, moving a million miles an hour about load-bearing calculations and aesthetic flow, stalled. It took a full 3 seconds for the words on the box to register. Clear blue early detection pregnancy test. The world didn't stop. It didn't shatter. It didn't even tilt. Instead, it sharpened into a hyper-real, excruciatingly detailed still life. I could see every grain in the wood of his desk, every pixel on his flickering screens, every single hair on my own arm standing on end. A pregnancy test. In my husband's backpack. We hadn't used a pregnancy test in over 4 years. Not since the desperate, hopeful, and ultimately devastating 2-year period when we tried for a baby. The memory of that time was a locked box in the deepest, darkest part of my soul. The temperature charts, the doctor's visits, the silent hope every month, followed by the crushing disappointment. The final diagnosis, unexplained infertility. It had nearly broken us. We'd sealed that part of our life away, focusing on our careers, on building this beautiful, sterile, empty life together. My fingers trembled as I opened the box. Inside, nestled in molded plastic, was the digital test stick. And there, in the little result window, was a single, unequivocal word. Pregnant. The air left my lungs in a quiet, soundless rush. I stared at the word, at the little plus sign icon next to it. It was real. A life. A baby. But not my baby. The logic was cold, brutal, and instantaneous. This test was not for me. I would have known. I would have been the one buying it, taking it, waiting with a heart full of terrified hope. This was someone else's. This was evidence. This was the secret my husband carried in his lucky backpack. A strange, detached calm settled over me. It was like a layer of emotional permafrost, freezing the initial shock, the incipient agony, before it could even begin to thaw. I carefully placed the test back in its box and the box back in the zippered pouch, exactly as I had found it. I turned. Mark was standing in the doorway, a questioning smile on his handsome face. He had a coffee mug in one hand, his reading glasses perched on his head. Lose something, Ilara? He asked, his voice warm and familiar. The voice that had whispered, "I love you," 1,000 times. The voice that now felt like a foreign language. My eyes met his. I didn't see the man I'd loved for 8 years, married for 6. I saw a stranger. A traitor. A man who had taken the deepest, most painful wound of our shared life and had casually, carelessly, given its fulfillment to someone else. And then I did it. I smiled. It wasn't a smile of joy or amusement. It was a cold, sharp, knowing curve of my lips that didn't touch my eyes. It was the smile of a chess player who has just seen their opponent's endgame and knows, with absolute certainty, that they have already won. His smile faltered. Confusion clouded his clear blue eyes. "Ilara? What is it?" I didn't answer. I simply walked towards him, my bare feet silent on the floor. I walked past him through the doorway, leaving the charger, the proposal, and the shattered remains of my marriage behind me. I felt his stunned gaze on my back, a physical pressure between my shoulder blades, but I didn't turn around. The front door of our apartment clicked shut behind me with a soft, final sound. I stood in the hushed, carpeted hallway, the cold smile still etched on my face. The pain was there, a great roaring beast waiting in the wings, but for now it was held at bay by something stronger, something purer. The icy, focused fire of revenge. The elevator descended with a gentle, whispering hum. I watched the numbers above the door light up in reverse sequence. 5, 4, 3. Each floor felt like a layer of my old life being stripped away. By the time the doors slid open on the pristine, marble-clad lobby, Ilara Thorne, the devoted wife, was gone. What remained was a core of pure, unadulterated survival instinct. Frank, the evening doorman, looked up from his desk, his kind, wrinkled face registering surprise. "Mrs. Thorne? Going out for a late stroll? Can I call you a car?" "No thank you, Frank," I said, my voice remarkably steady, almost pleasant. "Just need some air." The smile I gave him was a pale, benign cousin to the cold, sharp weapon I'd wielded upstairs. It was a testament to a lifetime of practiced social grace that I could conjure it at all. I pushed through the heavy brass and glass doors, and the humid night air of the city hit me like a wall. I started walking with no destination in mind. My body was on autopilot, navigating the familiar streets while my mind was a war room, already assessing the damage and plotting a counteroffensive. Pregnant. The word echoed, not with sadness but with a furious, incandescent rage. He hadn't just cheated. Cheating was a sin of weakness, of impulse. This was a sin of deliberation. This was a second life. He had taken the dream we had built together, the dream that had crumbled to dust and grief, and he had given it to another woman. He had made her a mother. The one thing I could not be for him. The logical part of my brain, the architect, began connecting the dots. The business trips that had become more frequent. The new, secretive passcode on his phone. The faint, unfamiliar floral scent on his jacket a few weeks ago, which I'd dismissed as hotel laundry soap. The way he'd been subtly distant, yet overly affectionate at times, as if trying to compensate for a guilt I hadn't even known was there. I found myself outside a small all-night diner, a place of gleaming chrome and neon I'd passed 1,000 times but never entered. The normalcy of it was jarring. People were inside, eating fries, laughing, living their lives, completely unaware that my universe had just been atomized. I slid into a vinyl booth at the back, the red material squeaking under my dress. A waitress with tired eyes and a name tag that read Brenda brought me a coffee without me asking. I wrapped my hands around the thick ceramic mug, the heat a grounding, physical sensation against the ice in my veins. What now? The question was simple, monumental. The old Ilara would have cried. She would have confronted him, sobbed, begged for explanations, dissected every moment of the last year for clues she'd missed. She would have been shattered. But the old Ilara was a luxury I could no longer afford. My phone, which had been clutched in my hand, buzzed. The screen lit up with Mark's name and a picture of us, smiling on a beach in Santorini. A lifetime ago. I let it go to voicemail. It buzzed again. And again. Then a text lit up the screen. "Mark, Ilara, where are you? What's going on? Are you okay? Please answer." The concern in his text was so authentic, so perfectly husband-like, that it made me want to scream. The sheer audacity of his performance was breathtaking. I took a sip of the bitter coffee. It tasted like fuel. My first instinct was to go nuclear. To pack a bag, hire a lawyer, and drain our joint accounts. But that was a messy, emotional reaction. It gave him the power of a reaction. It made me the victim, the wounded wife. I refused that role. My cold smile returned, reflected in the dark surface of my coffee. Oh, he didn't get to see me break. He didn't get to offer excuses or lies. He had presented me with a fact, a pregnant mistress. I would present him with a consequence. But it wouldn't be a tantrum. It would be a meticulously planned, flawlessly executed demolition of the life he had built on a lie. My own phone buzzed again, but this time it was my partner and best friend, Liam. His name was a lifeline. I answered. Alara? Hey, just checking in. You sounded stressed about the proposal earlier. Everything on track? His voice was warm, laced with its usual easygoing charm. For a second I couldn't speak. The simple, caring normality of his question threatened to crack the icy veneer. I took a sharp breath. Liam, I said, and my voice was tight, foreign. I need a favor. He heard it immediately. The shift in my tone. The absence of me. Alara? What's wrong? What happened? I can't explain right now. Not over the phone. Can I come over? Of course. Well, are you safe? Is Mark with you? I'm safe. Mark is at home. I'm on my way. 20 minutes later, I was standing outside Liam's loft in a converted warehouse in a trendier, more artistic part of the city. He opened the door before I could knock. He was in jeans and a faded t-shirt, his dark hair messy, his green eyes wide with concern. Jesus, Alara, you're white as a sheet, he said, pulling me inside. His loft was the antithesis of my apartment. Warm, cluttered, filled with books, half-finished canvases, and the smell of turpentine and old wood. He led me to his worn leather sofa and pressed a glass of whiskey into my hands. Drink. Then talk. I took a burning sip and then I told him. The charger. The backpack. The box. The word pregnant. I relayed it all in a flat, detached monotone as if reading a news report about a stranger. I told him about my cold smile, my silent exit. Liam listened, his expression shifting from concern to disbelief, then to a slow-burning, furious understanding. When I finished, he didn't offer platitudes. He didn't say, I'm sorry. He knew me better than that. That fucking bastard, he whispered, his voice thick with rage. He ran a hand through his hair. What do you need? I need to not feel anything right now, I said, looking directly at him. The feeling will come later and it will be catastrophic. But for now, I need to be a machine. I need to work. The proposal is due tonight. I need to finish it. I can't do it there. Can I work here? Liam stared at me, a complex mix of admiration and heartbreak in his eyes. He had been there through the infertility struggles. He had held me while I cried. He knew what this meant, the unique, exquisite torture of it. Of course, he said simply. He got up and cleared a space on his large drafting-style desk, plugging in my laptop charger. Command Central is all yours. For the next 5 hours I worked. I buried the seismic shock of my personal life under a mountain of architectural specifications, 3D renderings and budget forecasts. The focus was a mercy. It was a scalpel cutting away the emotional tissue and leaving only the clean bone of purpose. Liam moved around me quietly, bringing me more coffee, a sandwich I didn't eat, and finally just silent, solid support. He was the only person in the world who knew the fortress of my composure was built on a foundation of fault lines. As the clock neared midnight, I attached the final files and hit send. The proposal was done. The moment the confirmation email appeared on my screen, the adrenaline that had been sustaining me vanished. The ice in my veins began to crack. I leaned back in the chair, the full, crushing weight of the day descending upon me. I looked at Liam, who was watching me from the sofa, a book open but unread on his lap. It's done, I said, my voice a hollow whisper. He stood up and walked over to me, kneeling beside the chair. He didn't try to hug me. He just took my cold hands in his warm ones. Okay, he said softly. Tao what? I met his gaze, and for the first time since I'd seen that little white box, I felt the hot, sharp sting of tears. Now, I said, the words trembling, I go to war. The first skirmish in my war was one of silence. I spent the night on Liam's sofa, wrapped in a soft wool blanket that smelled of him, paint and clean linen. I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark, listening to the city and the sound of my own heart, a frantic, trapped bird beating against the cage of my ribs. I let the plan form, taking shape in the darkness, each step a cold, deliberate move. At 7 a.m. my phone was a battleground. 23 missed calls from Mark. A torrent of texts, their tone evolving from confused concern to frantic worry to a sharp-edged fear. Mark, Alara, this isn't funny. Where are you? I'm getting really worried. Mark, please just tell me you're safe. Mark, I've called the hospitals. I called your mom. No one knows where you are. Mark, Alara, if this is about something I did, just talk to me. This is insane. Mark, answer your phone. The last one was from an hour ago. The panic in his words was a sweet, dark balm. Good. Let him panic. Let him imagine the worst. Let the uncertainty gnaw at him. I sent one text. To my assistant Jessica. Me, Jessica, a family emergency has come up. I will be working remotely for the foreseeable future. Please forward all urgent correspondence to my private email. I will be in touch. Please do not share my contact details or discuss my whereabouts with anyone, including Mark. This is critical. Her reply was instantaneous and professional. Understood, Alara. I hope everything is okay. The team has your back. Next, I called my bank. With a few security questions, I had a hold placed on our joint accounts and transferred 50% of the liquid assets into a new private account. It wasn't about the money, it was about control. It was a signal fired across his bow. Only then, with my logistical fortress secured, did I turn my attention back to my husband. I typed a single simple sentence and hit send. Me, I am safe. I need space. Do not contact me. His reply was immediate, as if he'd been clutching his phone, waiting. Mark, space? What the hell, Alara? What is going on? You just vanished. You can't just drop a bomb like that and go radio silent. We need to talk. I didn't respond. I turned off the notifications for his number. The silence was my weapon. I imagined him in our apartment, pacing the polished concrete floors, running his hands through his perfectly styled hair, his mind racing through 1,000 scenarios, none of which I was sure included the pregnancy test. He was probably still thinking it was a work-related meltdown, or some sudden, bizarre midlife crisis. The truth, the specific, damning truth, had not yet occurred to him. The arrogance of the guilty is that they believe their secrets are forever safe. What's the first move? Liam asked. He was making coffee, his movements steady and calm. He had taken the day off from his graphic design studio, no questions asked. I need to know who she is, I said, my voice raspy from lack of sleep. I need all of it. Her name, where she works, how long it's been going on. I need to understand the enemy. Liam nodded. I have a friend. A private investigator. Discreet ex-police. I can call him. Do it, I said. And I need to find an apartment. Something temporary. I can't stay here and drag you into this. You're not dragging me anywhere, he said firmly, placing a mug of coffee in front of me. You're my best friend. This is where you are. End of story. The gratitude that washed over me was so profound it was dizzying. In the ruins of my marriage, his friendship was the one stable, unshakable pillar. The next 48 hours were a blur of grim efficiency. Liam's PI friend, a burly, no-nonsense man named David, was on the case. Within a day he had a name. Chloe Summers. A 28-year-old junior associate at Mark's firm. Blonde. Pretty. Ambitious. David provided photos from her social media. A bright, smiling face full of a youthful vitality that made my heart clench. He provided timelines. The working dinners that ran late. The weekend conference in Napa that coincided with a series of loved-up photos on her private Instagram, photos Mark was tagged in. The pieces fit together with a sickening, perfect clarity. I rented a sleek, furnished one-bedroom apartment in a high-security building downtown, paying the exorbitant fee from my new account. It was sterile and impersonal, a perfect blank canvas for my new temporary life. Meanwhile, Mark's attempts at contact became increasingly desperate. He started calling Liam, who, following my instructions, played dumb. Yeah man, I talked to her. She's just really stressed with work. Needed some headspace. You know how she gets, Liam said into the phone, his voice a masterpiece of casual unconcern. I watched him, my heart pounding as he listened. I'm sure she'll call you when she's ready. Yeah, it's weird, but what can you do? He hung up and looked at me. He's losing it, Alara. He sounds broken. Good, I said, the word tasting like ash. The facade, the cold, calculating machine was beginning to wear thin. In the quiet moments, in the shower of my new, lonely apartment, the grief would ambush me. Sobs would rack my body, silent, heaving things that left me weak and gasping on the tiled floor. The image of the positive test would flash behind my eyes, and a pain so acute would slice through me that I thought I would physically die. I was mourning the death of my marriage, the death of the man I thought I knew, and the death of the motherhood that had been stolen from me twice. First by biology and now by betrayal. 4 days after the discovery, I was forcing down a piece of toast in my new kitchen when my intercom buzzed. I froze. Only Liam and the building manager had the number. I walked to the panel, my heart hammering. Yes. A distorted, frantic voice crackled through the speaker. Alara. It's me. Please. We need to talk. Mark. He had found me. How? He must have hired his own PI. The realization sent a fresh wave of cold fury through me. He couldn't even respect my one simple demand for space. I pressed the talk button. The silence stretched out and I knew he could hear my breathing. Alara, please. I know you're there. Baby, please. Whatever I did, I'm sorry. Just let me see you. Let me explain. His voice was ragged, stripped raw. It was the voice of a man on the edge. I said nothing. I just stood there listening to his desperation, letting it feed the cold, hard thing growing inside me. Fine, he suddenly screamed, the sound cracking through the speaker. Fine. Don't talk to me. But I'm not leaving. I'll stay here all night. I love you, Alara. Do you hear me? I love you. I released the talk button and walked away from the intercom, leaving him screaming his lies into the silent, uncaring void. I went to the window, carefully peering through the blinds down to the street. There he was, a small, pathetic figure on the sidewalk, his head thrown back, staring up at the anonymous windows of my building. He looked completely, utterly broke. And we hadn't even begun. He camped out for 6 hours. I watched him from my perch, a hawk observing its prey. He paced, he sat on the curb with his head in his hands, he made frantic phone calls. Probably to Liam again, who didn't answer. The performance was impressive in its desperation. It was also, I thought with a fresh spike of bitterness, a magnificent distraction from the pregnant woman waiting in the wings. Finally, as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the street, he left, his shoulders slumped in defeat. The moment he turned the corner, the tension that had been holding me upright snapped. I slid down the wall onto the floor, trembling with a toxic cocktail of fury, pity, and exhaustion. His invasion of my new sanctuary changed the calculus. The silent treatment had been effective, but it was a defensive strategy. It was time to go on the offensive. I couldn't let him control the narrative, couldn't let him paint this as a mysterious marital spat. He needed to know that I knew. He needed to see in my eyes the absolute and final end of us. The decision brought a strange sense of calm. The waiting was over. I didn't call him. I didn't text. I simply got dressed in a sharp black tailored suit, my armor, and did my makeup with meticulous care, concealing the shadows under my eyes, painting my lips a bold, unforgiving red. I looked in the mirror. I looked powerful. I looked untouchable. It was a lie, but it was a convincing one. I took a taxi to our apartment, my heart a cold, hard stone in my chest. I used my key, the familiar click of the lock, feeling alien and wrong. The apartment was dark and silent, but I could feel his presence. I found him in the living room, sitting in the dark on our large white sofa, a half-empty bottle of whiskey on the coffee table in front of him. He looked wrecked. His clothes were rumpled, his eyes were red-rimmed and hollow, and a dark stubble covered his jaw. The sight of him, so physically diminished, almost broke my resolve. Almost. He looked up as I entered, his eyes widening in shock and a flicker of desperate hope. Alara, he breathed, scrambling to his feet. You came back. I didn't come back, I said, my voice cool and flat. I remained standing, my purse held tight in my hands. I came to talk. Thank God, he said, taking a step towards me, his hands outstretched. You have to tell me what's going on. I've been going out of my mind. But I thought something terrible had happened to you. Something terrible did happen, I replied, not moving an inch. I went looking for a charger. The confusion on his face was genuine. For a brilliant man, he could be remarkably obtuse. A charger? What are you talking about? Is this about work? Did the proposal not go well? We can fix it, whatever it is. He was still playing the part of the concerned, supportive husband. The audacity was staggering. It went fine, Mark. It's submitted. But that's not what this is about. I took a deliberate step forward, my heels clicking on the floor. You see, when I couldn't find my charger, I looked in your backpack. Your lucky backpack. I watched the words land. His face went through a rapid, micro-expressive journey, confusion, then dawning comprehension, then sheer, unadulterated terror. It was the most validating thing I had seen in my life. The mask had finally slipped. My backpack? He stammered, his face turning a sickly pale. Yes. And I found something very interesting in the zippered pouch. Next to your passport. I paused, letting the silence stretch, letting him squirm. A little white box. From clear blue. The blood drained from his face completely. He looked like a man staring into his own open grave. His mouth opened but no sound came out. And inside that box, I continued, my voice dropping to a deadly whisper, was a digital test. And do you know what word was on that screen, Mark? Can you guess? He swayed on his feet, bracing himself against the sofa. I can explain. The word was pregnant, I said, slicing through his pathetic attempt. So, let me be perfectly clear. I am not pregnant. Therefore the test was not for me. The logical conclusion is that it belongs to someone else. You're someone else. The dam broke. It was a mistake, he cried, his voice cracking. A one-time thing. Meant nothing. She means nothing. She has a name, Mark. Chloe. Chloe Summers. Saying her name aloud, putting a name to the phantom, made it all terrifyingly real. He flinched as if I'd struck him. How do you know that? Did you really think you were that clever? I asked, a cold, mirthless laugh escaping my lips. Did you think I was that blind? The business trips? The new passcode? The scent on your jacket? I saw it all, Mark. I just chose to trust you. My mistake. He crumpled, falling to his knees on the expensive rug. It was a dramatic, pathetic gesture. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Alara. It was a moment of weakness. It was after you got that big promotion. I felt inadequate. She was there, she flattered me. It was stupid. I hate myself for it. I listened to his excuses, each one more cliché and insulting than the last. He was blaming me. Blaming my success for his infidelity? The fury inside me turned white hot. Get up, I said, my voice like ice. Don't you dare kneel before me. Don't you dare try to cheapen this with your pathetic self-pity. This wasn't a one-time thing. This has been going on for months. You didn't just sleep with her, Mark. You got her pregnant. You gave her the one thing we couldn't have together. You broke our marriage, but you also spat on its grave. Tears were streaming down his face now, real messy sobs. I'll fix it, he choked out. I'll end it. I'll make her get rid of it. We can fix this. We can go to therapy. We can start over. His words hung in the air, vile and toxic. Get rid of it. He was offering to dispose of his child, our dream, like it was a piece of inconvenient trash, just to save his own skin. In that moment, any lingering love or pity I had for him evaporated. The man I married was not just a cheat, he was a moral vacuum. I looked down at him, sobbing at my feet, and I felt nothing. Nothing but a vast, echoing contempt. There is no we, Mark, I said, my voice quiet and final. There is no fixing this. There is no starting over. You're going to be a father. You need to deal with that. But you will do it without me. I turned and walked towards the door, the same exit I had made days ago, but this time it was definitive. Alara, wait. Please, he screamed, his voice raw with a grief that was too little too late. I didn't look back. I walked out, closing the door on my old life, on the sobbing wreck of the man I once loved. The confrontation was over. I had won. So why did I feel so utterly, completely lost? The days after the confrontation passed in a strange, hollow echo. The high of facing him, of seeing the truth shatter his world, had faded, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion and a quiet, persistent ache. I had won the battle, but the war for my own soul was just beginning. I moved into the sterile apartment fully, the few boxes of clothes and personal items I'd had Liam retrieve from the house feeling alien in the blank space. It wasn't a home, it was a bunker. A place to lick wounds and plot the next move. The problem was I was all out of moves. The grand plan had culminated in that confrontation. Now there was only the aftermath. My lawyer, a sharp, impeccably dressed woman named Anya Sharma, laid out the cold, hard facts. With the evidence of infidelity and the pregnancy, the divorce would be straightforward. The prenup was solid, but Anya was confident she could secure a more than favorable settlement for me, especially given the emotional distress. "We'll go for the jugular on the financials," she said, her voice crisp and businesslike. "His infidelity gives us significant leverage." I signed the paper she put in front of me, my hand moving automatically. It felt like I was signing my own death certificate. The final, legal acknowledgement that 8 years of my life were being officially redacted. Work was my only refuge. I threw myself into the nascent stages of the project I'd submitted the proposal for, losing myself in blueprints and site surveys. My team, bless them, treated me with a careful, respectful distance. They knew something was wrong. My sudden remote work status and the swift legal changes to my emergency contact information were dead giveaways. But they never asked. I was their leader and I was holding it together by a thread. They respected the facade. It was during one of these long, lonely evenings, surrounded by architectural schematics spread across my floor, that the scaffolding finally broke. I was looking for a specific pen. A heavy, silver fountain pen Mark had given me for our 5th anniversary. I couldn't find it. It was a stupid, trivial thing, but its absence felt like the last straw. I started tearing through boxes, my breathing becoming ragged. It wasn't about the pen. It was about everything it represented. A love I thought was real, a promise that was now a lie. The tears came then, not the silent, stealthy ones from the shower, but great, heaving sobs that tore from my throat. I collapsed onto the floor amidst the blueprints, the carefully drawn lines of my future projects blurring into meaningless streaks. I cried for the babies I would never have. I cried for the husband who was a stranger. I cried for the home that was now just a house he lived in. I cried until my throat was raw and my body was limp with spent emotion. I don't know how long I lay there. The city lights twinkled outside my window, indifferent to my personal cataclysm. My phone buzzed on the floor beside me. It was Liam. The sound of his voice when I answered with a choked, "Hello?" was like a lifeline. "Alara? What's wrong? Are you hurt?" The concern in his tone was immediate and fierce. "I can't find my pen," I managed to sob, the absurdity of the statement making me cry harder. There was a pause on the other end. "I'm coming over," he said, and the line went dead. 15 minutes later he was at my door, letting himself in with the key I'd given him. He took in the scene, me on the floor surrounded by paper, my face a blotchy, tear-stained mess, and without a word he came and sat on the floor beside me. He didn't try to hug me or tell me it would be okay. He just sat there, his solid, quiet presence a bulwark against the storm inside me. After a while my sobs subsided into shaky hiccups. I leaned my head against his shoulder, too exhausted to care about propriety or strength. "I hate him," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "And I hate that I still miss the man I thought he was." "I know," Liam said softly. "That's the worst part. You have to mourn the person who died even though the corpse is still walking around." The accuracy of his words was breathtaking. That was exactly it. I was in mourning. "He offered to make her get rid of it," I said, the memory causing a fresh wave of nausea. "Our dream, Liam. He called it an it." Liam's body went rigid beside me. "He's a coward and a fool," he said, his voice low and tight with anger. "That child, it's innocent in all this. And so are you." We sat in silence for a long time. The chaos of papers around us, the half-finished plans for a future, felt symbolic. My life was a construction site and everything had been torn down to the foundation. "What do I do now, Liam?" I asked, the question a plea. "I have no plan. I have nothing." He shifted, turning to look at me. His green eyes were serious in the dim light. "You rebuild, Alara. You take it one day at a time. You feel the pain because you have to. You don't run from it. And you let your friends help you." He reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers brushing my cheek. It was a simple gesture, but it sent a shockwave through my system. It wasn't the touch of a friend comforting a friend. It was something more. Something deeper and terrifying and warm. I looked at him, really looked at him. At the familiar curve of his jaw, the kindness in his eyes, the steadiness that had been my anchor for over a decade. I saw the boy I'd met in college, the man who had stood by me through every high and low. The man who was here on the floor with me in the middle of my ruin. The ice around my heart didn't melt. It didn't shatter. But a single hairline. The hairline crack in the ice didn't widen into a chasm that night. It didn't need to. Its mere existence was a revolution. The feeling of Liam's hand on my cheek, the look in his eyes that was more than friendship, lingered in the air between us. A new, fragile structure being sketched over the ruins of the old. We didn't talk about it. We simply sat there until the sun began to tinge the sky with pale gold, and then he helped me up, made me a cup of tea and tidied my blueprints into a neat stack. "I'm here," he said simply at the door. "For whatever you need. Whenever you need it." After he left, the silence of the apartment felt different. It was no longer just empty, it was waiting. The grief was still a physical weight in my chest, but it was no longer the only occupant. There was a flicker of something else. Not hope, not yet. But possibility. The next morning I did something I hadn't done since the discovery. I called my mother. "Elara, darling," her musical voice chimed down the line. "To what do I owe the pleasure of a call before noon on a weekday? Is everything all right?" My mother lived in a world of garden parties and gallery openings, a world I had carefully shielded from the crumbling foundations of my marriage. Taking a deep breath, I shattered that illusion. "Mom," I said, my voice trembling only slightly. "Mark and I are getting a divorce." The silence on the other end was profound. Then a sharp, pained intake of breath. "Oh, my sweet girl. What happened?" I told her. I gave her the edited, less brutal version, but I included the essential truth. Infidelity, a pregnancy. I heard her soft crying on the other end of the line. "That stupid, stupid boy," she whispered, her voice thick with tears. "I always thought he was a little too pleased with himself. My darling, I am so sorry. Where are you? Are you safe?" "I'm safe. I have an apartment. Liam's been a great help." Another pause, this one more thoughtful. "Liam has always been a good soul. A much better soul than that man you married." The venom in her tone was surprising and fiercely comforting. "You listen to me, Elara Thorne. You are a brilliant, beautiful, formidable woman. This is a setback, not a defeat. We are going to get through this. You are coming for dinner on Sunday. I'm making your favorite. And we are not going to speak of him unless you want to." Tears welled in my eyes again, but this time they were warm, cleansing tears. I had expected pity, maybe even a dose of "I told you so." She had never been Mark's biggest fan. Instead, I got unwavering, lioness-like support. It was another pillar being driven into the shaky ground of my new life. The following week, I forced myself back into the world. I went to the office. The stairs were there, but they were met with my newly perfected mask of cool professionalism. I attended client meetings, my mind sharper than it had been in months, as if the emotional purge had cleared out the clutter. I was building something not just for my clients but for myself. One evening, Liam showed up at my door with a bag of Thai food and a determined look. "We're going out," he announced. "I don't want to go out, Liam." "Tough," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "It's not a request. It's an intervention. You've been holed up in here or buried in work for weeks. You need to remember there's a world outside that doesn't involve CD software or a cheating ex-husband." He took me to a tiny hidden jazz bar he knew, a place with low ceilings, smoky air, and music that felt like a physical presence. We didn't talk about Mark. We didn't talk about divorce. We talked about art, about a ridiculous movie we'd seen in college, about his latest project, about my vision for the new waterfront development. We laughed. The sound of it felt foreign in my throat, like a language I hadn't spoken in years. Sitting there in the dim light, the saxophone weaving a soulful melody around us, I watched him. I saw the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the easy grace of his hands as he gestured. I felt the warmth of his arm where it brushed against mine. And that hairline crack in the ice, it spread a little. It was there, in the safety of the music and the darkness, that I finally asked the question that had been hovering between us since that night on the floor. "Liam, what was that?" "The other night." He grew still, his eyes fixed on mine. The playful light in them faded, replaced by a sober, intense honesty. "I think you know what it was, Elara. I need to hear you say it." He took a slow breath. "It was me, not being able to pretend anymore. It was me seeing you in so much pain and wanting to be more than just the friend who picks up the pieces. It was me being terrified that I was about to ruin the most important friendship I've ever had by telling you that I'm in love with you." I have been for a long time. The world didn't stop. The music played on. But everything shifted. The confession didn't feel like a burden or a complication. It felt like a foundation. Solid. Built on years of shared history and unwavering loyalty. I'm a mess, Liam, I whispered, my heart hammering against my ribs. I'm broken. I don't know who I am right now. You're not broken, he said, his voice firm. You're under renovation. And I'm in no rush. I needed you to know what you're building on. When you're ready. He drove me home, the silence between us now charged but not uncomfortable. At my door he didn't try to kiss me. He just squeezed my hand. Good night, Ilara. I went inside, leaning back against the closed door, my mind reeling. Love. It wasn't a frantic, passionate fire like it had been with Mark in the beginning. It was a slow, steady burn. A hearth, not a wildfire. And for the first time the thought of it didn't terrify me. It felt like coming home. The next day the final piece of the legal process began. Anya served Mark with the divorce papers. My phone, which I had reluctantly unblocked for legal necessity, lit up immediately. This time I answered. His voice was a hollow shell. Ilara. The papers. It's really over. Yes, Mark. It's been over. I can't believe you're doing this. The self-pity was still there, a faint echo of its former strength. I'm not doing anything, I said calmly. You did it all. I'm just signing the paperwork. There was a long silence. I could hear his ragged breathing. Chloe, she's keeping it. She started showing. The words were spoken with a kind of numb horror. A strange sense of peace settled over me. That child, innocent in all this, would have its life. It was a reality I had already accepted. Then I guess congratulations are in order, I said, my voice devoid of malice. You're going to be a father. He began to cry again, soft, broken sobs. I lost everything. I lost you. I lost our life. You made a choice, Mark, I said, my tone final. Now you have to live with it. I have to go. Wait. Lara, please. Is there someone else? Is that why you're being so cold? Is it Liam? The question was pathetic, a last desperate grasp at regaining some twisted form of control. I didn't owe him an answer. But I gave him one anyway. It was the final brick in the wall between us. My heart, I said slowly, deliberately, is no longer your concern. Goodbye, Mark. I hung up the phone. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vengeful. I felt free. The scaffolding was coming down. The blueprint for my new life was in my hands, and for the first time I was excited to start building. The first shovel of dirt turned. It wasn't a dramatic, cinematic moment. It was a quiet, personal ceremony of one. I was breaking ground on the future, and the soil was rich with the compost of my past. The divorce proceedings moved with the swift, impersonal efficiency of a well-oiled machine. Anya was a pit bull, and Mark, broken and resigned, offered little resistance. The financial settlement was more than generous, a nest egg that guaranteed my freedom. The apartment, the cars, the investments, it was all just stuff. I took my half, my personal belongings, and my name. I wanted nothing that carried the ghost of our life together. I found a new space for myself, not just an apartment, but a raw, sun-drenched loft with exposed brick and vast north-facing windows. It was a shell full of potential waiting for my vision. I spent my weekends not wallowing but sketching, planning, choosing finishes. I was building a home for one, a sanctuary that reflected only me. Work continued to be my anchor. The waterfront project, Aura on the Bay, was officially mine. The client had loved my proposal, and the challenge of bringing my vision to life was all-consuming in the best way. My team, now fully aware of the divorce, rallied around me with a fierce, protective loyalty. I was no longer just their boss. I was their leader who had faced a storm and was still standing. And through it all there was Liam. He didn't press. He didn't demand. He was just there. He helped me move into the loft, his artist's eye invaluable in visualizing the space. He brought me coffee when I worked late, listened to my frustrations about stubborn contractors, and celebrated the small victories with a quiet, genuine pride. We were sitting on the floor of my new loft, surrounded by paint samples and furniture catalogs, a pizza box between us. The setting sun streamed through the massive windows, painting the bare walls in shades of orange and gold. I think I'm going to go with this one, I said, holding up a swatch of a soft, warm gray. It's called Dawn Mist. Bold choice, he teased, a smile playing on his lips. I was betting on Chantilly lace. I'm not a white walls kind of woman anymore, I said, and the truth of the statement resonated deep within me. The old Alara, the one who lived in a minimalist, curated showpiece, was gone. This Alara wanted warmth, texture, life. His smile softened. No, he said, his gaze intense. You're not. The air between us shifted, grew thick with all the unspoken words. The confession in the jazz bar hung between us, a promise waiting to be fulfilled. Liam, I began, my voice barely a whisper. I think I'm ready to be more than a construction site. He went very still, his eyes searching mine. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything, I said, and it was the truth. The grief for my marriage was now a quiet, settled thing, a scar instead of an open wound. The fury had burned itself out, leaving behind ashes that would only make the new growth stronger. And the feeling I had for Liam, it had grown in the fertile space left behind, a steady, deep-rooted oak, not a fragile sapling. I reached out, my fingers brushing against his. It was a small gesture, but it felt more intimate than any kiss I could remember. He turned his hand, lacing his fingers through mine, his grip firm and sure. Okay, he said, his voice husky with emotion. Then we build. He leaned in slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away. I didn't. I met him halfway. The kiss was nothing like I expected. It wasn't a frantic claiming or a desperate solace. It was a homecoming. It was slow and deep and profoundly tender. It tasted of shared history and a hopeful future. It felt like the first solid, permanent thing in my life in over a year. When we finally broke apart, I rested my forehead against his, my eyes closed, breathing him in. I've wanted to do that for a very, very long time, he murmured. I know, I replied, a real, unforced smile spreading across my face. I think a part of me has been waiting for it, too. That kiss was the true groundbreaking. It wasn't the start of a frantic affair. It was the beginning of a seamless transition from the deepest friendship into a love that felt destined. We took it slow. We dated. We went to movies and held hands. We cooked dinners together in my new kitchen. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. It was easy. It was right. It was during one of these quiet evenings, curled up with him on my new, impossibly comfortable sofa, that my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. A cold dread trickled down my spine. I almost didn't look, but a part of me needed to. Unknown number. Alara, it's Chloe. I know I have no right to contact you, but I need to see you. Please. It's important. I showed the phone to Liam. His jaw tightened. You don't have to see her. I know, I said, my heart pounding. But I think I do. The past wasn't quite done with me yet. It was time to face the final ghost. I agreed to meet Chloe at a neutral public place, a bright modern cafe near my office at lunchtime. I needed the anonymity of a crowd, the safety of escape routes. I wore my armor again, a sharp black dress, my red lipstick. Liam wanted to come, but I knew I had to do this alone. This was between her and me. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table, nervously stirring a cup of tea. She was even more striking in person, her blonde hair pulled back, her face fresh and young. And she was undeniably, beautifully pregnant. A small, rounded bump pressed against her simple linen dress. The sight of it was a physical blow, but I absorbed it, letting the pain wash through me and then recede. It was her reality. It was no longer my ghost. She looked up as I approached, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and something that looked like shame. Alara, she said, her voice soft. Thank you for coming. I sat down, placing my purse on the table between us. You said it was important. She took a deep, shaky breath, her hands fluttering to her stomach. I need you to know that I never meant for any of this to happen. I know that's a cliché, but it's true. He told me that your marriage was more of a business arrangement. That you were both unhappy but staying together for appearances. I said nothing. I just watched her, my face a calm mask. He was so charming, so attentive, she continued, her eyes welling with tears. And I was stupid and flattered. By the time I realized he was lying, it was too late. I was in love with him. And I was pregnant. She looked down at her bump, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. When I told him, he panicked. He told me to get an abortion. He said it would ruin everything. Her voice broke. He offered me money. A lot of money. My stomach churned. Hearing it from her, the confirmation of his cowardice was somehow worse. This young woman, naive and foolish as she may have been, had been used and discarded just as callously as I had. "I'm keeping the baby," she said, her voice gaining a sliver of strength. "I'm leaving the firm. Moving back home to be near my family. I want nothing from him. I've filed for child support, but that's it." She looked up, her eyes pleading. I needed you to know that I'm sorry. So truly, deeply sorry. I played a part in destroying your life and I have to live with that." I looked at this girl, barely a woman facing a future as a single mother. And I felt a surprising emotion. It wasn't forgiveness, not exactly. It was a profound, weary pity. For her. For me. For the mess one man's selfishness had created. "You didn't destroy my life, Chloe," I said, my voice quiet but clear. "You ended a chapter that was already rotten at its core. Mark did that. He lied to you and he lied to me. We were both his victims." She stared at me, stunned by my lack of venom. "I'm not going to wish you well," I continued, picking up my purse. "That would be dishonest. But I don't wish you ill either. That child deserves a good life. I hope you can give it one." I stood to leave. This was the final closure. Seeing her, hearing her story had exorcised the last of my demons. There was no more anger, only a distant academic sadness. "Ilara," she called out as I turned. He's not doing well. He's drinking a lot. He's a mess." I paused but didn't look back. "That," I said, "is no longer my concern." I walked out of the cafe and into the bright afternoon sun. I felt lighter than I had in years. The last chain had been unlocked. Weeks turned into months. My loft became a home, filled with light and the art Liam and I collected together. Aura on the Bay began to rise from the ground, a testament to my resilience. My life was full and it was mine. One rainy evening, Liam and I were cozied up in the loft, a fire crackling in the fireplace. We were reviewing fabric samples for the window seats he was designing for me, a collaboration of our two arts. My phone, face down on the coffee table, vibrated. I ignored it. It had been months. The divorce was final. Our worlds were entirely separate. It vibrated again. And again. Insistent. Liam looked at me, a question in his eyes. I sighed and picked it up. It was a number I didn't recognize, but it had a hospital prefix. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Is this Ilara Thorne?" a professional female voice asked. "Yes. This is Nurse Wilkins from New York Presbyterian. We have a Mark Thorne here as a patient. He's listed you as his emergency contact." The knot tightened. "There must be a mistake. We're divorced." "I understand, ma'am. But you're still the only contact in his phone. He was found in his apartment. Severe alcohol poisoning. He's stable now, but he's in a very bad way. He's asking for you." I was silent for a long moment. I looked at Liam, at the warm, safe world we had built together. I thought of the pregnant test, the lies, the sobbing man on my rug. I thought of the sheer, utter audacity of him still having me listed, of dragging me back into his chaos even now. A clean, cold finality settled over me. "Ma'am?" the nurse prompted. I took a slow breath. This was the last loose end. The last thread connecting me to his shipwreck. "I am no longer his emergency contact," I said, my voice calm and firm. "I will give you the number for his parents. You are to contact them and you are to remove my information from his file. I'm not his family. I'm not his wife. I am not his keeper." I recited the number for Patricia and Robert Thorne, good, decent people who had never quite understood their son, and felt a weight I didn't even know I was carrying lift from my shoulders. I was not abandoning him. I was returning him to his rightful place. His well-being was now and should have always been the responsibility of his blood family. "Please ensure they are contacted immediately," I said. "And do not call this number again." I placed the phone back on the table and turned to Liam. The look on his face wasn't one of pity or curiosity. It was one of fierce, unwavering pride. "You're incredible," he whispered. A shuddering breath I didn't know I was holding escaped my lips. The cool, composed facade crumbled and the reality of what I had just done, the finality of it, washed over me. "I'm free," I whispered, the words trembling with the truth of them. Tears not of grief but of profound release filled my eyes. Liam didn't say a word. He simply gathered me into his arms, pulling me onto his lap and holding me as I cried, his hands moving in slow, soothing circles on my back. He held me through the storm of my relief, a safe harbor in the rain-lashed night. When my tears subsided, I rested against him, spent and peaceful. The fire popped and crackled, the only sound in the warm, dim room. "I love you, Liam," I said, the words clear and sure against his neck. I felt his breath catch. He cupped my face in his hands, his thumbs wiping the last traces of tears from my cheeks. His eyes, in the firelight, were deep pools of emerald and gold, filled with a love so vast it felt like coming home. "I have loved you," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "for what feels like my entire life. And I will spend the rest of it making sure you never ever forget it." He kissed me then, and it was different from all the kisses that had come before. It wasn't a kiss of passion or comfort or promise. It was a seal. A final, gentle locking of the door on the past and a simultaneous opening of every door to our future. It was a kiss that tasted of rain and forgiveness and a happiness so deep it felt like roots sinking into the earth. Later, as we lay tangled together in the darkness, the rain a gentle lullaby against the glass, I knew with a certainty that settled in my bones that this was not an ending, nor was it a frantic new beginning. It was a gentle, seamless merging of paths. The war was over. The fortress walls had crumbled, not to leave me exposed but to make space for a garden. And in that garden, with Liam's steady hand in mine, we would build a life. Not a perfect one, but a real one, full of simple joys, shared dreams, and a love that had been patiently waiting in the wings all along. Our story was just beginning, and I, at long last, was ready to turn the page. The end.